Do you need a quick and easy homecoming dress? Because I don't. So I hope that somebody does. Welcome back to my channel. So once again, I am making a bunch of dresses for an occasion that I'm not even attending and have never actually attended. And this time we're doing homecoming dresses. So I realized that homecoming was coming up and I will take any excuse to make a bunch of dresses. And I thought that this would be a good time to do another like mini series, pretty similar to the way I did my prom dress series, where I'm going to show you guys how to make 3 different homecoming dresses. And it's going to be 3 videos. The first one that you're watching right now is going to be the easy beginner-friendly dress. The second one is going to be the kind of intermediate dress. And then the third one is going to be like the most challenging dress. But they're all going to be super pretty. I bought all the fabrics yesterday and I am absolutely in love with all of them. The first fabric that we're going to be working with today is this absolutely stunning brocade that I got from Joann's. And I thought that this one would be a really cool fabric to do the beginner-friendly dress on, because although it's going to be a really simple design, having an interesting fabric will make it look like way more expensive and way more difficult than it actually is. And I know that brocade is not a fabric that people think is easy to work with, but I promise it's not going to be too hard and the product is going to be really pretty, so I think it's going to be worth it. And for this project, you're going to need 2 yards of your fabric, and then you're also going to need some lining fabric, and 1 yard would be plenty. This is just some leftover twill fabric that I had in my box, so I'm going to be using this today. And also, this beginner-friendly dress should be really simple and pretty quick to make. So if you guys are kind of in a time crunch for your dress, this one might be your go-to, but this is going to be a pretty fast project. And also for this mini-series, I'm going to work on making patterns for these dresses, so hopefully those will be on my website very soon to go along with this project. So those will have different sizing options and will just make the process even easier for you guys to make these dresses. So let's get to it! On this project, I really didn't want to mess up my brocade fabric, so I decided to draft all of my pattern pieces on my lining first, because this one I wasn't very worried if I messed up on. And then I cut out all of my pieces and I used those to cut out the pieces out of the brocade fabric. So I just laid them on top basically as a pattern and traced them all out. And I know that I am making a pattern for you guys, but I always like to give you guys the option to try drafting them yourselves, so I'm still going to show you guys the measurements like I always do. And when I was working with my brocade fabric, you want to make sure that if it has a pattern, you want the pattern to be going the same direction on all the pieces. And also on the center, I decided to line up one of the patterns so that it was directly in the center. So that's just something to keep an eye on if you are working with a more patterned fabric. The first pieces that I am showing you here are the front pieces, and what you cut out of your lining here, you're also going to cut the same amount out of your brocade. And then here is the back piece. And that little line there is just to tell you guys that you should take it in a little bit more at the top instead of making it a straight line like I showed you guys here. Next up are the little strap pieces and the pocket pieces, because yes, this dress has pockets, and the strap piece is only out of the brocade and the pocket piece is only out of the lining. And then lastly is our skirt piece. And this is just going to be a giant rectangle because we're going to do pleats later. And you're going to cut 2 skirt pieces, but one of your pieces, you're going to cut it down the center so that in the back we have these 2 equal pieces. And that is all the pieces for this dress. Sewing time! So the first pieces I'm going to work with are the front center piece and the side pieces. And I'm going to take our front piece and I'm going to sew one side piece to it down either side. And the bigger side of the center piece is going to go towards the curve of the side piece. And you want to make sure that you always put them pretty side to pretty side, pin them all together, and then stitch down these sides. And I'm also going to put a zigzag stitch down this edge to help the fabric not fray so much. And I'm going to do these same steps with the lining pieces too. And now this is what your bodice should look like, and I'm already obsessed with it. I think it's going to be so pretty, you guys. And now we're going to put this to the side for a minute and work on the back pieces next. On the back pieces, because this is just like a big flat piece right now, we need to sew a little dart in the back to make it more of a curve so it actually fits the shape of our back. And so basically we're just going to sew a little triangle into it. On the back pieces, this side is going towards the other side piece, and this side is going towards the back. So I'm going to take this side here and fold it over for 4 inches, lining this up so that the bottoms are flat here. And then I'm going to mark out a dart that goes in 3/4 of an inch from the bottom and fades back into the top at 7 inches. And then once this is pinned out, we're just going to sew this in here. And I'm going to do that on all of the back pieces, including the lining. Now that all of these have been sewn, and I also just took them to the iron really quickly and pressed them down flat with a very low setting, and now we can bring the front pieces back, and we're going to sew this side on the back towards this side on the front. Just by putting them pretty side to pretty side, pinning them together, stitching down it, and then adding a zigzag stitch again. And who would have guessed that it's the same process for the lining pieces? And that's all of the bodice pieces. Now we need to work on making some straps so we can actually wear it. And I'm going to take this really big strip, and I cut it way too thick. So I'm going to cut mine down so that it's about 1.25 inches thick. Now because this fabric is on the thicker side, we can't do like the typical method of just folding this over and stitching across it to make straps, because it would be extremely hard to turn this right side out. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to fold over one side to the center, fold over the other, and then fold this piece in half. And I'm going to fold it like that all the way down. Once it's all pinned, we can just stitch right down the side to sew it all together. And now we can cut this long piece in half, and we have both of our straps. Now we can pin our straps to the bodice, and I was going to have them go all the way to the side, but I think it's a little bit too far. So I'm going to pin them about 1 inch away from the seam here. And when you pin them, you want to make sure that they are facing down like this. And then I'm going to take the lining piece and put this pretty side down on top of this. And I'm going to match up the seams with the other front piece and pin these together across the top seams. And I'm going to sew this all the way across the top edge of this piece, all the way down to the back here. But because I moved the straps a little bit closer to the side seam, instead of going all the way up to this top corner here, I'm going to pivot my foot here and make this curve actually go down here. And then on the back piece, because we're going to need to add the straps in a minute, I'm also going to leave this top edge open. So I'm going to stitch up to this point, cut my stitches, and start again down this side. And now I'm going to put a zigzag stitch all around those seams and trim down these edges. And now you can turn it right side out and the strap should already be attached. And I just tried on the dress and I pinned the straps to be a comfortable length when I'm wearing it. So now I'm going to unpin them and cut them a little bit below where I pinned them so I have room to sew them on. And then I'm going to turn this inside out again, and I'm going to put the straps through to the back side where we left it open, and I'm going to pin them in place and stitch right across. And also while I'm sewing across the top here, I'm going to make this side here go in a little bit more and down a little bit lower, but you can actually make this curve as deep as you want it to be. And now when we turn this right side out again, these straps are done. And now where I can on the bodice, to make these seams lay a little bit flatter, I'm going to open this piece up like this, and I'm going to push all the raw edges towards the lining piece this way, and then I'm going to top stitch them down like this. And it's not possible to do this like all the way around all of these edges just because of all the turns and stuff, but just doing it across the wide areas where there's lots of space is going to make it look a lot nicer. And now you should have a finished bodice. And now it is skirt time. For this skirt, I think I'm going to do a bunch of box pleats, which I will show you guys how to do in a minute. They're not very difficult. And I think that will be the nicest way to make this sort of stiffer fabric into a skirt. But before we start on the pleats, we need to add in everybody's favorite, pockets! Here I am working with the side seam of one of the skirts, and I'm going to start my pocket 6 inches down from the waistband, and I'm going to pin these in place and then sew down the seam here. And we're going to do that down either side seam of the skirt, except for the back of the half skirts. And to help these pieces lay extra nice and flat, I'm also going to open up that seam and top stitch it down. And now I'm going to bring in the front skirt and lay one of the back skirts down on top of it. And I'm going to pin them together down this side seam, and I'm also going to pin their pockets together. And now I'm going to start from the top, stitch down the side here, curve and go around the pocket, and then pivot and go back down the other side. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side as well. And again, I'm going to zigzag these edges. And now when we turn this out to the right side, we have these hidden pockets. And now it is time to do the pleats. So for the pleats, it's just going to be a lot of measuring and folding. And the first place you want to mark out is the very center of the front piece and put a pin right here. And then from there, we're going to continue marking out 3.5 inch spaces from this point. And once those are all marked out, starting from the center, I'm going to make the first box pleat by taking the pin next to it and folding this over so that those two pins are touching. And then I'm going to add a pin here to hold this in place. Then on the other side of that pin, I'm going to fold over this piece and also bring it to touch that pin. And that is our first box pleat. Now I'm going to go to the side of that, and I'm going to skip over one pin and choose the next one. And this is going to be our new center pin. So now I'm going to take this pin, fold it over until it touches the first pin, pin it down, and then bring the other side over so that it also touches. And I'm going to do that all the way down this skirt. And now that these are all pinned, I'm going to add 2 basting stitches all across this edge to hold it in place. And a basting stitch is just the longest stitch length on your machine, and we're going to take these stitches out later. I'm also going to iron out all these pleats now to make them nice and flat. It'll be a little bit easier to do it now before we attach it to the rest of the dress. And now we are on to the very exciting step of finally sewing the bodice to the skirt. I'm just going to pin these pretty side to pretty side and match up all of my seams, and then go right ahead and stitch them. And if the bodice is looking a little bit long on you, this would also be the time to either sew it a little bit higher than normal, or just cut it and then stitch these together. And now that the skirt is attached, we can go ahead and take out all those basting stitches. And also add a zigzag stitch around the waist. Next up, we need to put in an invisible zipper. So I'm just going to use this one that I got from Joann's. And this one's a 22 inch, but that's going to be really long for this project. A 12 to 14 would work probably just as well. But if you're ever unsure, getting longer ones is better because you can always make them shorter, but you can't make them longer. So I'm going to unzip our zipper, and your zipper is going to have this folded over edge here. And we want to unroll that and iron this so that it lays nice and flat. So I'm just going to guide my iron all down that edge to open it up. Now I'm going to take our zipper and zip it up, and it can be hard to tell where to start and stop on a zipper, so I like to just use a pencil and mark the very top edge before I start sewing. And then to sew on the zipper, we want to stitch right on this line here that we opened up with the iron, as close to the zipper as we can without hitting it. So I'm just going to mark that seam for you guys with a marker so you can actually see where we're supposed to sew. Sorry, it's kind of messy. We want to sew right on this line here. So now I'm going to bring in our dress, and I also tried it on and marked where I want the zipper to go so that it'll fit me nice and snugly. And now I'm going to take the left side of my zipper first and unzip it, and then I'm going to flip it over to the back, and I'm going to pin it down the dress. And you also want to make sure that you're not going to sew it like directly on top of a pleat. You want to make the pattern look as complete as possible. And I'm going to sew mine for about 9 inches past the waistline here. And then we're just going to very carefully stitch it on. And then I'm going to zip up the zipper again, and I'm going to mark where the waist seam ended up hitting and where I stopped sewing so that I can match those up on the other side. And then I'm going to unzip it and take the other side, flip it over, and pin it to the other side of the dress. And when you're doing this step, you really want to make sure that you don't accidentally twist your zipper because it's not fun. And then I'm going to stitch down the other side. And then you can zip it up and the zipper magically disappears. Now we just need to finish up a few little details on the zipper, and the first thing is we need to get rid of these like top things here. So I'm going to unzip it a little and then fold this little flap over and put a few stitches here to hold it in place. And then at the bottom, because like I said my zipper is too long, I'm going to put a few stitches here to make sure that the zipper stays together and then just cut it right off. And then we still need to finish up the bottom part of the skirt, and I'm just going to put these together and sew straight up until we reach the zipper. And then I'm also going to put a zigzag stitch down all of the raw edges we just sewed. And now all that's left to do is add a hem all around the bottom edge of the skirt by folding over the fabric twice, pinning it in place, and then stitching right across it. And you can of course make your skirt as long or short as you want. And here is the first finished homecoming dress. Although this dress is really simple, I think it's so elegant and I absolutely love how it turned out. This fabric makes it look super expensive even though it's a really simple design, and I'm obsessed with how the stiffness of the brocade made the skirt flare out because it keeps a lot of shape and makes the dress look very expensive and poofy. And also, who doesn't love a homecoming dress that has pockets? Like, it just makes it so much better. If you guys have been thinking about making your own homecoming dress, I really hope that you guys give this one a try. And like I said, I am working on the pattern for it, so if it's not out by the time this video is up, it's coming out in the next couple of days. And that comes in 5 different sizes too, so I hope it makes the whole sewing process really easy for you guys. And if you do end up making this dress, you guys should send me a picture of it on Instagram. I love seeing how your guys' turn out. And don't forget to stay tuned for next week to see homecoming dress number 2. I hope you guys have a good rest of your week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!